Hi everyone, I am Lady Joy Calumia. I am the first reporter of Group 1. Our lesson is all about Lesson 1, the meaning of ethical framework. In this lesson, we have two intended learning outcomes. First is to explain the meaning of ethical framework. Second is to distinguish among five ethical framework. So it is good to understand first what an ethical framework before studying the five most common ethical frameworks in detail. So let's have the activity first. The direction for the activity is to match the items in column 1 with column 2. You may repeat an answer, so kindly comment down below your answer. So, abstraction. Abstraction. An ethical framework is a set of codes that an individual uses to guide his or her behavior. So, it is just another term for moral standards. So, balikan nato atong first lesson about moral standards. So, when we say moral standards, it is based on natural law, the consequence of one's actions and sense of duty. So, moral standards are based on natural law, the law of God revealed through human reason, or the law of God written in the hearts of men. So, moral standards also are based on consequence standards. So, when we say consequence standards, it leads to a good consequence or result, like the greatest good of the greatest number, on which is or on what is moral. To further understand what an ethical framework is, I have researched it on Google. So based on my research, ethical framework are perspectives useful for reasoning what course of action may provide the most moral outcome. So in many cases, a person may not use a reasoning process but rather do what they simply feel is best at the same time. Next is, an ethical framework guides an individual in answering these two questions: what do I ought to do and why do I ought to do so when we say what do I ought to do, if someone ought to do something means it is the right thing to do, while why do I ought to do so, it indicates duty or obligation, like why do I oblige to do it. So ethical framework serve as guidepost in moral life. So when we say guidepost, it is a rule or piece of advice or information that helps people understand something or know what to do. Next, so the various dominant mental frames may be classified as follows. The first one is virtue or character ethics of Aristotle. Second, natural law or commandment ethics of St. Thomas and others. The third one is deontological and duty framework of Immanuel Kant. Fourth is utilitarianist, teleological, and consequentialist approach. And the last one, love and justice framework. So in this, I was assigned about virtue or character ethics of Aristotle. So virtue. So first, virtue, based on my research, virtue ethics is a philosophy developed by Aristotle and other ancient Greeks. It is the quest to understand and live a life of moral character. This character-based approach to morality assumes that we acquire virtue through practice. So, virtue ethics asked who is the ethical person. So, dari makita nato kung or mahibal-an nato kung kinsa man jud ang mga ethical person. So for Aristotle, the ethical person is virtuous one who has developed good character or has developed virtues. One attain virtues when he or she actualizes his or her potentials or possibilities, the highest of which is happiness. So when we say one attain virtues, kanang nahimo na ginigod na develop ni iyang good character and virtues. So when we say develop good character or virtues, it defines good actions as ones that display or embody virtuous character traits like courage, loyalty, honesty, or wisdom. So a virtue itself is a disposition to act, think, and feel in certain ways. Next is happiness is the joy of self-realization, self-fulfillment, and experience of having actualized one's potentials. And the last one, for virtue ethics, Aristotle, what is moral is what a virtuous person does, or what is good is the right thing to do to a virtuous person. And that is the end of my report, and I hope you learned something. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am Marijun M. Sales and I am the second reporter. My topic is all about the natural law and the deontological um, and duty framework of Immanuel Kant. So, natural law or commandment ethics of St. Thomas. But first, who is St. Thomas? St. Thomas Aquinas was born on 1225, an Italian Catholic priest who belongs to the religious order of preachers or Dominicans. So for St. Thomas, what is right is what follows the natural law, the rule which says do good and avoid evil. In knowing the good as distinguished from evil, one is guided by 10 Commandments, which is summed up as loving God as one's fellow man. So, the master principle of natural law, Ruth Aquinas, was that do good and avoid evil. Meaning, good is to be done and pursued, and evil avoided. And para malaman din natin kung ano ang pinagkaiba sa good and bad, one is guided by 10 Commandments. For example, sa katong you shall not murder. So, madistinguish nato nga evil tong wala misunod or follow sa commandment, while ang katong may follow is good. So, deontological and duty framework of Immanuel Kant. Kant's framework is deon or duty or deontological framework. Deontology centers on the rights of individuals and the intentions associated with particular behavior, equal respect given to all persons. So, ang deontology is nag-focus ra siya sa sa rights sa mas tag-usa nato and the intentions associated with particular behavior, especially sa equal respect given to all persons. And the deontological approach is based on universal principles such as honesty, fairness, justice, and respect for persons and property. It is based on the categorical imperative that is one must act such that his or her maxim will be the maxim of all. Maxim, guys, is a rule for good or sensible behavior, especially one in the form of a saying or motto. So, kung unsa man ang maxim sa isa ka tawo will be the maxim of all. So, this acting based on a maxim that can be the maxim of all is a duty. So kuan siya kanang kung unsa man ang maxim sa isa, maxim na sa tanan. Mauna na siya ang ato ang duty. Acting out of duty or deon is acting out of good will or intentions. Treating man as an end, not a means to an end, is acting with good will or intentions. So that would be all. Thank you for listening.
So good day everyone. So I am Ami Salma and I'm going to continue the report of Group 1. So my report is the last two part of the dominant mental frame or the types of frameworks. So the number 4 is the utilitarianist, teleological, and consequentialist framework. So when we say utilitarianism, so it is a theory of morality that advocates actions that foster happiness and oppose actions that cause unhappiness or harm. to anyone or to an individual. So, ang utilitarianism kay nag-promote siya og mga action na maka result of happiness of magpupus sa sadness or any harm. So the utilitarianist theological approach focuses on consequences. So in this, we didn't judge the action by how we do it or the process of that action. Instead, we are looking on the consequences or the result of that action. So, if it will produce a greater good to a greatest amount of people, then we can consider it as a good ethical action. So the decision maker is concerned with the utility of decision. So the rightness of an actions depends on the said net balance of consequences. Ang utilitarianist teleological and consequentialist framework focuses on consequences itself. It is the primary concern with the consequences of ethical decision. So this theory focuses on maximizing the goods of the others as well as the good of oneself. So teleological reasoning takes into consideration that the ethical decision is dependent upon the consequences on the end result of that action. Even though nga gibuhat na to nga na action is bad, but makaproduce siya greater good to the greatest amount of people, then we can consider that action as a good ethical act. So, ang number 4 nga framework, which is the utilitarianist, teleological, and consequentialist framework is, in general, whatever is being evaluated, we all to choose one that will produce the best overall result. Love and justice framework. So what is ethical is that which is just and that is loving. So justice is giving what is due to others while giving even more than what is due to others. So it is a very sabotable naman from the title itself, Love and Justice Framework. So of course, all of us have emotion to feel love, have a feelings, di ba? So it is a very essential emotion or feelings of every individual. Love often considered as partial, even blind sentiment that underlies only personal relationships. So it is the basic value governing the private life of a person. Unlike sa justice, it is supposed to be the basic value governing our public life. So when we feel love, of course, we can judge or give justice fairly, equally, and impartially. Application. So number 1, explain ethical framework by means of analogy. So other clues are what is an ethical framework for a guided tour, and another one is what is an ethical framework of a functioning organization for a year or more, or think of a word like guidepost or blueprints. So, sige ra kay ta nagbalik-balik. Unsa ka ng ethical framework? So, ang ethical framework is a set of codes that an individual makes use to guide his or her behavior. Ethics is what people use to distinguish based on your moral judgment what you think is the best solution for a particular problem is your moral framework. So knowing what is right and wrong in doing such thing, it will be good elements to shape our behavior or character as an individual. So what is ethical for a guide tour? As a professional guided tour, so maghuna-huna ka kung unsay epekto sa imong buhaton nga action sa mga traveler. I-avoid nimo ang mga negative issues nga kabalo ka nga nakakasama sa ubang tao or sa imong nasasakupan or sa imong travel ng mga tao. What is ethical framework of a functioning organization for a year or more? Or think of words like guideposts, blueprints. So, di ba, ang mga organization kay naadyo na sila tagline or guidepost nga every time nimo madunggan or makit-an kay makahuna-huna ka ana nga particular organization. Ethical framework is to be good and do good, no? So moral values save us or help us to guide us in making decision in our life. So it also improves one behavior and instilling respect to one another. So having a good moral is very essential to have because it helps us to allow make the right decision in our life to get the best version of ourselves and to have a better improvement to our moral values. So that's all my part. So thank you for listening and napay musunod na ako which is Alapan to continue the application and give us the summary of the report of the whole report of group 1.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dimple Alapan, and I am going to continue the Group 1 report, which is Chapter 4, Lesson 1, the Ethical Framework. So, and in this time, I am going to deliver the application and the key takeaways, which is the last part of our topic. So we are now already here in the second application. So for easy recall and for mastery, develop at least one mnemonic device on ethical frameworks. So for you to easily recall the words, we are going to use a mnemonic device. We are going to apply the mnemonic device on the ethical frameworks. So as you can see, the example below, the example words is the deontological framework. So instead of saying that words that is really hard to say, deontological framework, you can also say duty framework. So another example, the teleological, it's very hard to say, but there is another words that we can replace that words so that we can easily recall. So instead saying teleological frameworks, you can also say and or result frameworks. So another words, what are this? So we have here the natural law. So as we all know, natural law is what we usually think the 10 commandments, right? So natural law, 10 commandments are the same. Okay? So for the third application, so for mastery, formulate a matching type of test like the one you did in the activity phase. Exchange tests with your seatmate and answer the test separately, then correct answers together. So we can apply this one in the classroom. For the fourth application and the last application, so we have here we have to compose a syncane describing the ethical person based on any of the ethical frameworks. So note, there is a note here. A syncane is a 5-line poem that consists of the following. So there is an instruction here to make a syncane. So the first line, there must be a one word, and for the second line, 2 words that describes the line 1 or the first line. For the third line, you have to put an action words, the ing verbs that relate to the first line. And for the fourth line, you have to put 4 words, feelings or a complete sentence that relate to the line. And for the fifth line or the last line, you have to put one word as synonym of line 1 or a word that sums it up. So we have here the example below. Person: just, loving, thinking, deliberating, choosing. I am grateful he is ethical. So that is all about the syncane. So make your own syncane now. So let's proceed to the key takeaways. Oh, yun naman siya lagi. So the key takeaways. An ethical framework is a set of moral standards that serves as a guide for all persons to behave ethically and morally. So, an ethical framework is another term of moral standards. So, ethical frameworks serves as a guidepost in a moral life so that the person behave ethically and morally. So in ethical frameworks there are in this lesson there are most common ethical frameworks, and these are: first, virtue or character ethics of Aristotle. So these ethical frameworks or these frameworks is a quest to understand and live a life of moral character. So, for the natural law or commandment ethics of Saint Thomas and others, it was according to Saint Thomas, he says, do good and avoid evil. In knowing the good as distinguished from evil, this framework is guided by the Ten Commandments. So, next we have the deontological and duty framework of Immanuel Kant. So, according to Kant, all morally must stem from such duties, or a duty based on a deontological ethic. All human must be seen as inherently worthy of respect and dignity. So for the utilitarianist, teleological, and consequentialist approach. So for the utilitarianism is an ethical theory that determines what is right from wrong by focusing on the outcomes. So the last common ethical frameworks is the love and justice framework. So this framework says that what is ethical is that which is just and that which is loving. So I think that's all our report, and that's how our report ended. So thank you for listening. I hope you've learned something. Thank you. Bye-bye.